Hello and welcome to our second video supplement, this time talking about the early European reformers. Let's get started.
Alas, I fear I will never fully understand religion.
Well, that's alright, HD. You won't need to. Let's start with Martin Luther.
By your command. Martin Luther was a professor of theology and a monk in Wittenberg, and he became fixated upon the alarming levels of corruption that he observed in church practices.
And which of these most well-known dirty practices angered old Luther the most?
Far and away, the worst offense was the selling of indulgences.
Which were?
Essentially, they were like time cards, redeemable upon death, that would allow a person to avoid time spent in purgatory. The practice had no scriptural foundation, and was seen by many as a naked cash grab.
Why would the church do such a thing? Surely they had to realize someone wouldn't like that.
Pope Leo X wanted extra money to pay for the construction of St. Peter's Basilica. He could have afforded to build it himself, but he did not want to diminish his own wealth.
So, what did Martin Luther do about all of this? Anything?
Martin Luther compiled a long list of grievances which he called his 95 Theses. He then proceeded to nail this document to the doors of All Saints Church in Wittenberg, where everyone would see it.
I bet that made the church really angry with him, huh?
It did indeed. Pope Leo X and Holy Roman Emperor Charles V called for a special meeting, known as a Diet, to convene in a place called Worms. This was to become the famous Diet of Worms. Once there, Martin Luther was told to recant his works and say he was sorry, or defend his works and suffer the consequences.
In the end, Martin Luther stuck to his guns. Well, guess he was a monk, so he didn't actually have any guns, but he stood up for what he believed in. He refused to recant. Tell us what happened to him after that, HD.
Compliance. Martin Luther was excommunicated as a result of his statements. Luther accepted this and moved on, continuing his studies. Thousands of people would eventually leave the Catholic Church to follow his example. They were known as the Lutherans, and they are our first example of Protestants. Above all, they valued faith, believing that faith alone was all that was needed for salvation.
Martin Luther never really fell in love with the idea of this movement being named after him, but he guided his new followers. He translated the Bible into German, so even though he didn't intend to split the church...
That is what happened. Though he would not be the last to do so. Shall I move on to Calvin, sir?
Yes, please, go right on ahead. We need to get old Calvin in on this, too.
As you wish. John Calvin grew up in the early 16th century and was influenced by the humanism of the Renaissance. He took a more critical look at the teachings of the Catholic Church and decided that changes needed making. He was a supporter of Martin Luther, though they would not agree on everything.
So, John Calvin also broke off from the Catholic Church. Interestingly, he believed in predestination, which was this belief that God knew who was going to go to heaven and who was doomed to go to hell, even before they were born. It means that humans don't have true free will, and that no matter how hard a person may try, they cannot change where they are eventually headed. This was a huge affront to Martin Luther's idea of faith-based salvation, and nothing like the Catholic Church's works-based salvation. Anyways, get on with the story, HD. Tell us what happened. Any day now. Robot.
By your command. John Calvin also gathered a large number of followers in Switzerland and throughout Europe. They were known for their sparse lifestyle. Many things that were seen as temptation, like dancing, were strictly prohibited.
Alright, why don't you go ahead and sum all of this up for me, HD, make it nice and neat.
In the end, despite having different ideas about why a person would go to heaven or not, both Martin Luther and John Calvin agreed that the Catholic Church was wrong in practice and spirit. This has been our brief look at the beginning of the Protestant Reformation.
So, there you have it. 2 early reformers. Thanks for watching.